Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At TurnKey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, TurnKey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. TurnKey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Coming up today on the Nice Guys on Business.
How many of you have ever done more than you thought you could because someone else believed you could? It's the truth, right? So The differentiator is the transference of belief. Like Sandler wouldn't have 200 locations if there wasn't the transfer of belief and the picking of the right people to leave these because it's values and virtues that make you stick. Brian Tracy with the nugget bomber emblem that I have in my head, that doesn't matter if at the fundamental level, I don't believe he doesn't want the best for me, right? It's like that is the differentiator. And so at Ziglar, it's not only just about saying, hey, here's a legendary program that's impacted and transformed millions of lives. It's based on these values, these virtues, this philosophy that makes it real.
So tell me, when the time is right, will you be ready for the Nice Guys on Business? Oh, yeah. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by TurnKey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, welcome back to the Nice Guy podcast, Nice Guy community. Today's conversation on the Nice Guys brings together a few names that have helped define modern business and leadership. While their names may be familiar, each has forged a unique path while honoring a remarkable legacy. Michael Tracy has spent decades building on the timeless principles alongside his father, Brian Tracy. Tom Ziglar has carried forward the heart and wisdom of Zig Ziglar while making his own mark. And I've built upon a legacy of my father, David Sandler, while finding my own path as an entrepreneur and business and podcast host. What connects us isn't just sales and leadership, though. It's legacy, it's influence, and it's figuring out how to honor those who came before us while earning the right to be known for our own contributions. Gentlemen, welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doug. And good to see you, Tom.
Yep. Awesome to be here. I feel like I'm in a room of greatness, so it's kind of cool.
So before we get into the legacy, your last names have gotten our attention, but your work really helps people coming back over and over again for the stuff that you're doing today. So tell us, we'll start with you, Michael. What are you focused on today, and what do you hope that people know you for?
Well, that's a great question. So I remember in my early 20s, I really wanted to differentiate myself and build my own name because I saw my dad's name have such an impact. And so I spent a decade, having my own successes, my own wins and losses. And then as I got older, I got married, I started having children. I realized, my dad created something pretty unique. I mean, everywhere in the world that I've traveled, every stage I've taken, spoken to, people I've met, he's got a 100% positive rapport with everyone. I mean, he's really inspired and motivated so many different people. I've never heard one person complain or have a negative comment. And then I had a realization that, Brian is my dad. Obviously, he's a man, but he's also created a perennial brand. And so I started looking into his business, and he was slowing down, wasn't able to really be that detail oriented and manage all these different business units that he's created. We have a publisher in Germany, and we have a coaching franchise business and a corporate training business and all these different things. And I started looking, and I was like, Dad, we really need to manage all of these things. We have to, keep everything brand cohesive. And so for the past 3 years, I've taken on a leadership position at Brian Tracy International. I've renegotiated all the agreements, and the vision behind the effort is to create, a 100-year perennial brand that stands the test of time. And I'd like to be able to hand that down to my children at some point.
Nice. Great answer. Great answer. And Tom, how about with you?
Yeah, well, Michael, first off, I'm a huge fan of your dad and your family. When my father passed away the following year, I went out and visited your dad just to get some insight and some stories, and he was just incredible. And I, my nickname for him after that was the Nugget Bomber, meaning it didn't matter what the subject was. You were going to get 10 nuggets, and you couldn't write fast enough to keep up with the nuggets.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you for saying that. I mean, I grew up on Zig stuff too. So I've always felt like I've known him by extension. So it's a real honor to be hanging out with you and Doug.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
Let's go back for a quick second. Sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to step on you. You want to keep adding to what you were talking about?
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of my journey is I went to college and I thought I was going to be a professional golfer. So I started working as soon as I graduated at the company in the warehouse and doing cassette tape duplication and VHS, right? That's
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and so I'm packing boxes, shipping stuff, making stuff. I realized quickly because I got good enough to play in tournaments with the guys that were going on tour, and there's just a whole nother level. And so if you're like a fanatical golfer, you know what I mean. Like there's country club good, and then there's
Right.
Yeah.
the pros, right? So moved into sales, fell in love with sales. I'm 61. I tell people I've been doing this for 61 years because I was born into it, and it took a little while for me to figure out, the brand that Dad had created. And so this is the 100th year of Dad's life. If he was still alive, he'd be 100 this year.
Wow.
So when Dad turned 60, a little over 60, 40 years ago, 35, let's just say 65, 35 years ago is when I started working on how do we carry the legacy forward. And the interesting thing is that Dad's personal brand, he can't be duplicated, repeated. I mean, Michael, you got the same thing. Like, there's never going to be another Brian Tracy, and so you can't copy that. You can't try to do that. You have to do it in your own way. And I was blessed because Dad gave us, me and my sisters, the freedom to do that. He just leaned in and said, "Look, I would love for you to carry this on, but you're going to have to do it using your own strengths and talents." And so that's what I've tried to do. I'm kind of a nerd. When I speak, I'm not getting down on one knee and
Well, you develop your own style. You have,
yeah,
and I think, yeah, go ahead.
And mine was really through equipping others, through equipping our coaches, our speakers and trainers that we've certified. And I spend most of my time now in the leadership space. So working with large corporations, medium-sized companies on developing their leaders so that they can have an impact, and have that influence. And we have a specific way of doing that. But I love it. I mean, there's nothing better than sitting on an airplane and they say, "So what's your name?" And I say, "Tom Ziglar." And they go, "Any relation to Zig?" Right. And then it's just going to be a great trip. So I'm really blessed. But that's kind of the short story on that answer, Doug.
I feel the same way. And Tom, by the way, you carrying the legacy and the brand forward is so identifiable in every email that you send, every marketing piece that I receive. And I look through all of the stuff that you send, and it's amazing how you do bring forward the legacy. With some people try to make the legacy their own, and some people embrace the legacy, and you really have done a great job of embracing the legacy. And when I last time I talked to you, you shared the same thing about, look, when I get up on a stage, I feel like I'm the nerd of the group, but you do have your own strengths, and your strengths your strength is absolutely connecting with your audience and identifying that brand and bringing that brand through. So hats off to you for doing that.
Thank you. I'm just a bless. I mean, it's like you're right. It's like, how do you embrace the legacy without having it? I don't, crush is not the right word, but when I was golfing, I would watch Jack Nicklaus, and then his sons were trying to play. Gary Nicklaus was trying to play, and it was like, I could never imagine being Gary Nicklaus, like, because there's never going to be another Jack Nicklaus. You know what I mean? It's
Right, right.
like how
What
do you balance that? So
as someone that was coming from, let's see, I'm the same age as you, Tom, and I think you're younger than us, Michael, right? So are you still in your 50s?
I'm 43.
I was twisting your arm there a little bit. So I'm 61 also, and I can remember in the last in the decades that I've been on my own as an entrepreneur, anytime I would come off of a stage, having a last name that was in that realm of, hey, are you at all related to Dave Sandler, that sales guy? And I would say, yeah, Dave Sandler was my dad. And I could see that, you see that deer in the headlights kind of look. And I'm sure that we all get that deer in the headlights look. And you do, some people would say, oh man, I got to go through this story again. But I'm like you, Tom, and I'd love to hear your comments about this. When I'm sitting next to somebody or talking to somebody and they mention my dad, I know I have the next 2 hours covered in good conversation, because I love talking about that sales relationship that he built, and that reputation that he built. And Michael, I'm curious what your thoughts are, because I don't know that we've talked about that in our conversations in the past.
So it's funny when I sometimes I take a stage and frequently I'll be introduced as, Michael Tracy. This is Brian Tracy's son, and I have this funny little quip. I'll say, my father's Brian Tracy, and I'm sure he'd love to be here today, but unfortunately, it's me, but like through genetic transfer alone, like I have received all of his wisdom and knowledge and professional speaking ability. And I just pause and everybody kind of laughs, because it's like, obviously it's like impossible,
Right?
You really have to figure out how to do it by yourself and how to find your own authentic voice. And then you also have I think you also have to figure out your motive, like a murder investigator, why are you doing this? Like what is your motivation behind it? I won't take too much time, but my motive, I remember my dad was like, "Hey, Michael, you should really do direct sales," and I had just graduated from college, and I was thinking I was going to go work at a bank, I wanted to be in finance,
Right.
And he's like, "You should really go get some direct sales experience." And I was like, "No, Dad, what does that mean?" He goes, "That's where you get, belly to belly, eye to eye, and face to face with as many people as possible, and you try to sell them something." And so I resisted for a while, and then I humbled myself. In your early 20s, you still know everything,
Yeah, of course.
So I had to humble myself and be like, well, maybe my dad knows something about this. So I took a job as a residential door-to-door salesperson, and I knocked on like 10,000 doors in the first year, got rejected almost 10,000 times. But in that process, they made me a sales manager. And basically what that meant is I just had to go and recruit, train, mentor, and manage my own sales team.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned very quickly that very few people aspire to be like a door-to-door salesperson.
Right.
So people were quitting. Like I hire them, and then they'd quit, and then I hire them and they quit. And, every now and then one person would stick around for about 4 to 6 weeks, and they would start making some sales. And then, they go from a sale every other day to a sale a day to like 2 sales a day. And so they started making, $1,000, $1,200 a week. So they're going from minimum wage from $200 a week to like $1,200 a week, and everything about them changed. I mean, the money obviously was great, but like they started like walking differently and dressing better, and they started reading personal and professional development books like from Zig and David, and their whole lives kind of changed and expanded in a positive way. And that throughout my entire career, I've been like 4 or 5 different companies now. That's always been like the most gratifying thing, is watching that transformation happen from like sales skills development, like sales training. Because before, it's like before you have sales training, you're kind of reactive. You're just reacting to things around you, and then as soon as you learn how to sell, you can you get proactive, and you go, I can actually make things happen for myself. And so I mean, and carrying that forward, and I realized my dad probably wanted me to have that experience to understand that motivation behind a lot of the things that he did, in his formative years.
I think that, I mean, sales training is almost like relation. I mean, it's not almost, it is. It's relationship training. Unless you build a relationship with somebody, there's no way you're building anything other than a transaction. And that's not a way to build a good sales pipeline, is from transaction to transaction. Let's keep a relationship going with everybody. And I'm 100% with you, Michael. And I remember being in college and saying to my dad, you know, where's my franchise going to be? Where are you putting me? And he goes, we're not
Yeah.
doing that. And I said, what do you mean we're not doing that? And he says, well, you're not coming into the business. And I said, why can't I come into the business? He said, because you need to make it on your own before we do anything together.
Yeah.
And he didn't just say that and push me off the cliff. I mean, he was there for advice and encouragement and motivation and inspiration along the way. But man, I was heartbroken. I thought, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. Because even in the mid 80s, my dad had already built a fairly successful business by that point. And the writing was on the wall. This was not going to be just a one franchise business. This was going to be something that was going to be dozens, if not hundreds. And, you know, now there's several hundred and they're all over the world. And what's so cool about it is that I really didn't love that answer at the time. But man, I don't know that life would be the same as it is right now had I gone into the business at, 21, just getting out of college.
Yeah.
Tom, I'm curious what your spin on that is.
Yeah, that was, early in my career, my one regret was, I didn't go get experience somewhere else. Like just having, and it wasn't from the practical aspect of learning how to do it and customer relationships and everything else. It was the internal uh, realization that the feedback I was getting from the people who were leading me or managing me inside of our company, I always had that background noise saying,
Right.
are they really telling me the truth? Like, are they really being as hard as they should be? Or like, did I really do such a great job? And it took a while to get comfortable with that. One of the things that's really interesting, I study a lot of stuff because I'm a nerd. In Jewish tradition, the father-in-law will never hire the son-in-law to work in his business until the son-in-law has proved it on his own.
Mm.
And it's a biblical principle, and that is the father-in-law knows that he wants his daughter who's marrying the son-in-law to leave and cleave to the daughter. I mean, to the son-in-law, right?
Yeah.
To look to them for all of that, and then it speaks to, as men, we're wired to go and make it on our own. And so there's nothing like doing that than in the wild, it's like, it's,
Yeah.
it's that piece. And so that was one of the things that I look back on and I'm like, wow, I kind of missed that. And it's because I accidentally stepped into the business because it was only a short stopping ground for my golf career to take off. And then it turned into that. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on it. The other thought on Michael, on your 10,000 doors, when I was a sales manager, if somebody on their resume had gone to if they had worked for Southwestern, the book company that sold in the summer, I just hired them. I mean, it's like, you did a summer with Southwestern, you're hired.
So let me get back to the questions because I'm really curious. So I grew up, I can recall being maybe an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old at the kitchen table while my dad was putting together the original like pamphlets and presentations and things. And then we'd run up to the attic where he had the little binder machine, the kind that put the plastic clips onto the pieces of paper that you had to cut all of these tiny holes on the edge and then bind them together. And I remember that being like the early stage of what my dad had as his submarine, his sales cycle submarine, which is his process, which has been obviously adjusted and changed and all sorts of things now, but the basics remain the same. Do you remember, or can you maybe share a story about when you were before your name and your dad was your dad, meaning not he was always your dad, but before that name became famous? Do you remember that time when he was working as just a normal guy trying to figure out like his stride, or even to his last days in doing what he was doing? Is he still trying to figure that out? So maybe you guys could help me with an answer with that, Michael.
I have a formative story. I remember I was probably like 6 or 7 years old. And, when my dad was just starting out, he would take out advertisements in like a newspaper for like, a sales workshop, or closing techniques or whatever. And, he would joke. He's like, when I got in, he's like, when I got into speaking, I got really good at selling, he's like, I had to sell my car, I had to sell my clothes, like, because it was difficult in the beginning. And then he figured out a model where, he'd advertise, he'd have to spend, some money on advertising, and he'd sell tickets, at the door to these events, and the tickets would pay for the cost of the event. And then he'd have his audio programs. And so at the end of his presentation,
Yeah.
he'd have it. At first it was like just 2 or 3, and then it was 6 or 7. Then he ended up with like 8 or 9. Like I said, and I have one like as a like kind of like a prop. Do you remember these?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. I can't see it clearly, but it does. I'm sure it opens to a bunch of cassettes.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So he'd have these, right, and he'd go through and he'd go, this one, and he'd have this sales presentation. I remember it's just like it was so like artistically done. You go, this one will change how you think about your life. You'll be able to motivate yourself, and this one will help you manage your time. This one will make you, 4x, 10x your sales, and this one will give you a better relationship with your wife and family. Like he would go through, and each one he'd describe, and then he'd like kind of have them all on like a stool, and he'd be like, and the best news is these are all free. And everybody's like kind of taken aback. And he goes, because if you buy these today and you listen to them and you don't feel like you've got 10, 100 times your money's worth, then you can send them back to me at any time, and I'll give you a full refund. It's 100, he's like, unconditional guarantee for the life of these products. And people would stand up mid-presentation and like walk to the back of the room, and I would be the one kind of putting the it's in bags and stuff, and there'd be a guy with the credit card swiper, and that's how he made. That's kind of that was the model that worked for a long period of time, was like selling tapes in the back of the room. And then I remember at one point somebody came up to him and said, Brian, why don't you write a book? And he's like, write a book? He's like, oh yeah, like you have all these audio programs, they're really, I mean, Nightingale Conant was selling a lot of them. And he's like, okay, I'll write a book. And so he started writing books, and then people would call him and be like, hey, Brian, will you come and speak at our event? And he's like, okay. And then it will pay you up front to come and speak at the event.
Right.
And he's like, wait, I don't have to, I'm not selling anything. And they're like, no, please don't sell anything. Just we'll pay you whatever you want just to come and speak. And so his model flipped, like, and he became more of like a keynote speaker. But that's really, I think he really, really enjoyed that, because he didn't have to hold anything back. He had to basically give as much value as he wanted to for each presentation. So that was kind of like the evolution. Sorry, a little bit longer of a definition.
No, that's good. That's good. Great story. How about with you, Tom, with Zig?
Yeah, a couple, like there's tons of points in there, but it was like 1972. Dad was writing the book, which is now see at the top. He was speaking in St. Louis. We're in this hotel in the Eisenhower suite. I can only guess because President Eisenhower stayed there at some point. I'm 7, and he comes in and wakes me up in the adjoining room and says, the hotel is on fire. We got to go. And I look up, and Mom's got her robe on, and Dad's carrying a brown box. And we've got like 15 flights of stairs. So we walk outside, and the firefighters come off the stairwell, and they go, it's okay. It was in the laundry room. It's taken care of. You can go back to bed. And I said, Dad, what's in the box? It was the handwritten manuscript for See You at the Top. That was the only thing. And so it was like, that I had that thought, well, that must be important to him. Well, that came out in 74. And then that book sold millions and millions. And the big positive mental attitude rallies took off with Norman Vincent Peale and all of those things. And so he became a household name. And so now 5 years later, I'm 12, and he's speaking out in, I think it's Long Beach, where the Queen Mary was docked, right? And it was a hotel there. So it was some direct sales organization, probably like Kirby or one of the iconic ones.
Cutco.
And yeah. And
World
so
Book.
I'm 12 and I'm doing the product. And Michael, I know I'm doing the product table by myself. And it was the first time I'd done it. And it was really easy. It was like, this is a $200 program. This is a $500 whatever. And after the night was done, 2 product rushes and the whole thing. This was like before credit card machines. I mean, like people are handwriting
Right,
their
checks.
credit card number in.
That's crazy.
But there weren't a lot of credit cards because it was mainly cash. And I remember being 12 years old and pulling $8,000 of cash out of my pocket. And I'm like, this is not normal, right? This is not normal. So that's when I knew, hey, something's different here. But it was in my mid 20s when I kind of figured out what we did, that's when I figured out we're not in the book and tape business. We're in the life-changing business. So Michael, when you said transformation of somebody, like that transformational journey, that's when I finally was mature enough to go, oh, wait a second. It's not about the product. It's about that human's life who was changed, right?
Yeah, and my dad would say, everybody's just like one idea away from like a major transformation.
True, man. So true.
And you've used and Zig probably delivered that one idea to thousands, if not millions of people. David probably did that too. Brian's done that. And so I think that's what drives them is that, they do a presentation and then at some point in the future, somebody comes up to him and goes, Brian, or Zig or David, like you changed my life. You said this one thing at this one place, this one time, and it totally blew my mind and I changed my behavior and I got different results and everything, they mark it as, the point of transition or change or transformation. So I identify with that for sure.
Yeah.
There's so many great ideas that are out there that, that sit on the shelf forever. Our dads just actually took action on the things that was in their heads. I think about some of the ways that my dad innovated early on, and one of them was, creating something called this President's Club, where, hey, we're going to have people pay a yearly or a lifetime membership fee to be able to have access to the community. And nowadays, it's commonplace. Everybody builds a community, and then they charge a membership fee. That's the subscription-based, program that so many companies have and so many apps have now. But at the time, in the 70s or 80s, when I think that started, that was so out of character. And then on top of that, he said, "Hey, I like this idea so much. Let's franchise this." How do you franchise a man? Well, you don't franchise the man. You franchise the concepts that the man is talking about. So his legacy lives on and on and on through decades, and will continue on well after all of us are gone, because of the people that are carrying that community name on. Think about maybe the stuff that your dads did and that you guys are working on as how to continue the legacy. Can you maybe share something that either you or your dad had done that just is just amazing, that I can't believe that he thought of this at the time? It was just such a radical concept.
Oh, I mean, well, so we have a intellectual property licensing, so that's with the corporate training. There's a corporate franchise or a franchise coaching business. It's also growing really, really rapidly. And then we just a few years ago launched a Brian Tracy publishing division where people can go and get their books evaluated and published in that category. And then we have multiple agreements with we've probably like over 90 agreements with different publishers all over the world. I mean, there's a lot. So my dad was just like a voracious reader and worker. He just would be working all the time.
Right.
And he created all of these things and he set them all in motion. And then he just let them grow kind of organically. And so I've been spent the last few years trying to figure out where all these things are. Yeah. And who's reporting what and what rules they're playing by and all that stuff. So there's a lot that's happening all throughout the world. And a lot of people want to associate with the name Brian Tracy, just like they want to associate with Zig Ziglar, or David Sandler. And some people have permission to do it, and other people just do it without permission. So
Right.
it's the controlling the legacy is also just making sure that people don't misuse the name, for their own purposes. So I feel like there's it's like a kind of a double-sided coin.
And Tom, how about with Zig? What was ahead of his time that he started and it's still living on today?
When I look at all the cognitive neuroscience research that's come out, uh, he was teaching those principles 30, 40, 50, 60 years before medical science caught up, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's just always stunning to me that something that he was saying back then, it's like, oh yeah, we now have proof that this works. And I'm like, yeah, we've had this proof for a long time. And
Right.
dad wasn't the first one who thought of it either, because he got it from other places, and so his gift was, I heard this statement one time, a great preacher will tell a timeless message in a timely way.
Hmm.
And you know, if you're David Sandler, that's exactly what you did, right? The selling principles, selling is serving, and what is your motive for doing it, and all those things. So that's the thing that I'm watching, and I'll tell a story on when I was a sales manager, and we were doing a lot of corporate training at the time in the sales area. Every now and then a customer would reach out and they would say, "Hey, do you want to know what your competitors are saying about Ziglar?" And we'd be like, "Yeah, sure, tell us."
Hmm.
And so it was always this, right? Our competitor would say, Ziglar is just that motivation stuff. What you need is skill. Okay. And we're like, well, yeah, that is our strength. Attitude and mindset and is the strength, but show me a successful, negative, depressed salesperson.
Right. That's got good skills.
But here's what's interesting, and this is the legacy of the future, is that a subject matter expert in a corporation who really knows what they're doing, they can go to AI right now and they can build a sales skills program, a personal development skills program, a leadership skills. It doesn't matter. They can build it with their own knowledge, and page for page, line for line, you could say technically it's as good as anything Ziegler's ever done, right? I mean, that's the reality that we live in. But the other reality is, how many of you have ever done more than you thought you could because someone else believed you could?
Mm,
It's the truth, right? So
right.
the differentiator is the transference of belief. Like Sandler wouldn't have 200 locations if there wasn't the transfer of belief and the
Right.
picking of the right people to leave these because it's values and virtues that make you stick. Brian Tracy with you know, the nugget bomber emblem that I have in my head, uh, that doesn't matter if at the fundamental level, I don't believe he doesn't want the best for me, right? It's like that is the differentiator. And so at Ziglar, it's not only just about saying, hey, here's a legendary program that's impacted and transformed millions of lives. It's it's based on these values, these virtues, this philosophy that makes it real. And that's what makes us, we leverage AI all the time, but it also is the differentiator, because at the end of the day, AI will never believe in you.
Mm.
And so the person who builds that relationship on trust and on relationship skills and delivers the program, that's the winner. It's not just the program. And so having brands like we do, we just got a head start, man. We just got this advantage that allows us to confirm what they already want to believe about us.
Has there ever been a time when having the last name, whether it's Tracy, Ziegler, Sandler, is there ever been a time where any of those names have been a burden? Like, have you experienced anything where you felt like, can I just not be attached to that for a minute so I can do this thing over here? What do you guys say?
I mean, I guess it depends on, what environment you're in, but I can say that, trying to differentiate yourself, as like the son of somebody who's really well known is a really difficult thing. And I just like, they call it just switching your mindset around. So instead of like thinking about, okay, I'm in Brian's shadow, I'm in Brian's light, because he's created a path,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't have to go down his direction. I can go down a whole bunch of different directions, but I can see it as an opportunity or a burden. So in my early 20s, when I had a big ego, I was just thinking about kind of myself and like how to like differentiate myself, how to raise my status.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, well, I'm going to go in a totally different direction, but every single time I tried to go in a different direction, I ended up coming back to like a head of sales role, a VP of sales. So I was like, okay, I am, I'm the son of Brian, how am I supposed to differentiate from that? So if you embrace it, then everything becomes, everything starts to flow way more naturally. So I think that's, and ultimately too, when you look into the past, for thousands of years, the way that, somebody had learned was always from like an apprentice
Mm-hmm.
relationship, right? And so, and only recently, within the last couple hundred years, like in industrialized Western economies, has it been, popularized to just to separate yourself from the family as fast as possible, move to a different city, go through some sort of educational experience, move to some other city, find a job in a big corporation, and stay there for 40 years and then get a pension at the end.
Right.
That's a very unnatural way of doing things. So I like to think of it as, my dad basically kind of forced me out into this like kind of world of sales, and I kind of did a whole bunch of stuff, had some big wins, had some setbacks. And then when I came back and I looked at his business, I had the perspective I had from operating all these other businesses, and said, Dad, like, your business is not, we
Right.
need,
Right.
we need to fix it. Like, I need to fix it. But had I not gone out and got that experience and that education, I wouldn't have been able to recognize what was happening
So
internally.
a burden, which was really a win.
It
Pretty
was
much.
well, it was an education.
Right.
It was a unique education. Yeah.
And how about with you, Tom, with your dad? Ever feel like this is a pretty big weight for me to carry around?
Yeah, a couple of things. Probably about 6 months after Dad passed away, a good friend said, "How are you doing?" So I'm doing good. It wasn't unexpected. Um, he goes, "Well, how is it?" And I said, "The legacy is pretty heavy." And he said, "Your dad's legacy is complete. The only legacy you got to worry about is your own."
Mm,
That was a really freeing moment, right? That really helped. And then I do a lot of keynote speaking now and a lot of training, and boy, that was the last thing on this earth I ever wanted to do.
hmm.
And so I didn't start that until about 15 years ago. And when I started it, uh, the talks went okay. I got great feedback, but man, was my stomach just messed up. And I was like, ooh, this is terrible. And why does anybody ever do this? I mean,
Right.
like, this is like,
Right.
every fear. And so after a year of that, I sat myself in a corner and I said, why am I feeling this way?
Hmm.
And the answer was, I thought people wanted me to be like my dad.
Right.
And I said, is that true? Right. And so the answer is no, that's not true. They want me to have the same values. They want me to align with the same philosophy. But at the end of the day, they really want me to be the best version of me. And so I had thought what they want is me to have dad's style, which you cannot copy. And so this is where our world is in trouble today. And I love the apprenticeship example.
Hmm.
It's so powerful because it sets this high standard that we need. If your dad did something amazing, we've now got this high standard that we need to be accountable to. But we live in the world, the culture that says personal truth, your own standard, your own self. Don't worry about that. And so we just create low expectations and excuses for people. And so the trick is to 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 strive for the high standard around your own gifts and talents style, the gifts and talents that God gave you, right? That's the trick.
Yeah.
But having that high standard set for you is, man, that's a powerful thing. You just need to understand what the world expects isn't what we perceive what they expect. It's the principles, the values, the philosophy in which we walk it out. That's what matters.
What are you going to add, Michael?
Oh, I was just gonna. I have an interesting story, but a couple of different interesting stories. I remember. So I joined a software startup, and the company got sold to Barclays, which is a big international bank, and so I ended up at a bank. So funny enough,
There you go.
There you go. There you go. But big banks are kind of not very fun to work at. And so I decided to go do something else. And so for the first time in my life, I had time and money. And I was like, well, what do I want to do? And I was like, I'll go into sales training, because that's what I told you. It's like the best part of all of my careers. I'll do sales training. So I started a sales training company. I'm doing sales training, and then people start going, hey, Michael, we can't take the team out for the entire day, but maybe you could come in and speak for like 60 minutes, And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be a keynote speaker, you know? Right. So I tell my dad, I say, Dad, I'm going to be, people are asking me to do talks, like do little keynotes. I'm going to be a speaker. And he's like, oh, you want to be a speaker? He's like, why don't you come? I'm doing an event in San Diego. It's like 700 people. Why don't you come to the event? I'll introduce you to the promoter, and maybe he'll book you for an engagement. I'm like, okay, great. That sounds like a great opportunity. Yeah. And so I go, and I'm sitting in the audience, and 20 minutes before the first break, my dad goes, and I've got some exciting news. My son, Michael Tracy, is here, and he's going to come up to the stage and talk to you for 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
and I was like, and then to your point, Tom, like you're having like the physiological reaction, your heart's beating, your hands are sweating, and you're like, okay, well, what is that? What is that physiological reaction that you're having? I think that's just like the natural fear of public speaking, not being accepted, being rejected. But I found that over time, just to your point, Tom, you find your own way of communicating, your own voice, your own message. And the more authentic you are to that to yourself, way more natural it is to be in front of people on a stage. But yeah, you can't emulate Zig or Brian or David or Les Brown or any of these people. You have to find your own voice. And if the more you're connected to your own sense of authenticity and your own motivation and your own sense of value contribution, I think then you have like a natural gravity about you that people resonate with.
I've gone back and listened to my dad's tapes, the same cassette tapes that you have of your dad, Michael. And I've tried to imitate his timing and his presentations, because I thought that was all a part of what makes for a winning salesperson. In sales training, I'm like, okay, well, I just need to mimic exactly what he's doing. Man, I was the worst because I would think, okay, how would my dad, what would his inflection be on this particular response? Because, oh yeah, the question, how much is it? Oh, well, that's easy. I've heard him answer that question 1,000 times. Let me just figure out how I should, phrase it so that it closes the deal right here. I sucked at that. But when I started to not think about how my dad would respond and more like, well, what's the feeling that I'm trying to portray in this? It works so much better for me, because then I can insert my own personality into the sales presentation and the entire sales cycle. And I never did well. And Tom, I think last time we talked, and when I interviewed you on our Nice Guys podcast, we talked about that. And you said, I got up on stage, and when you were telling me about your stage experiences, you're like, I can't be my dad. You didn't want to be your dad, but you didn't know how to not be your dad at the same time. So I totally relate to all of that. This is so fun. I mean, I would love to do many more of these. What should I be asking you guys that I'm not asking you about? Whether it's about your legacy, about your dad, about what you guys have coming up. I'd love to give you some more opportunity to just share before we wrap up today.
I think we've had a pretty good conversation. I mean, I mean, I don't have any specific questions. I didn't come here with an agenda, just to kind of hang out and talk with both of you. I think we had a really cool, productive conversation.
Agreed.
And again, let's do it again. You know, we can pick a theme next time and just kind of riff off of that theme, and to have it a little bit more structured. But I've enjoyed myself. I just want to one point. I've watched Zig, on YouTube, and Brian, and it's not so much the emulation point, but what I've noticed about really great speakers is their strategic use of silence. And I think Zig does a good job with that. David probably did a great job with that. I think the master of it was like Les Brown.
Mm.
He'd just like say a word and just let it, power, and just stop. And then we got a little awkward, and then he kind of reinforced the point with some anecdote or story or whatever. But but I think Zig had a unique way of cadence.
Oh my gosh, so great.
Yeah, vocal cadence was off the charts.
And Tom, what should I be asking you that I'm not talking to you about?
Yeah, man, this is great. I think that would be awesome to have more of these with a theme or something. I mean, the world needs the foundational, not just the skills, but the philosophy and the values and virtues that support it, because that changes your whole life. The one thing that we have going this year is we're having the Ziglar 100. So you can go to Ziglar100.com. We're having a birthday party, right?
Yay.
We're doing the C at the top Ziglar 100 birthday party. Dave Ramsey is hosting it in Franklin, Tennessee. It's going to be in October. And we've got just an incredible group of speakers who are there. And these are speakers who give credit to Dad for getting them going. But it's not going to be a Zig love fest the whole time. They're going to all share their secrets. So we've got Brian Buffini and Dave and Todd Duncan and just some amazing folks that are there. So we're trying to reconnect all the Ziglarites, if you will, around this event, and it's going to be a great time.
Well, we'll brainstorm some ideas for some other themes that we could carry through. One that I just thought of as you were talking, Tom, is we all invite somebody else that has a legacy in their name also, and maybe that's something that we could have a 6-pack of great wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm excited. I would be happy to be the organizer of all of this. If you guys are really would be open to doing it, I would love to carry this forward and do something the next couple of months with some fun themes to it.
Yeah, let's do it. That sounds great.
100%.
Awesome. Well, Tom, Michael, thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for being on the Nice Guys on Business podcast. So excited. We're celebrating almost 1,800 episodes, 11 years, almost 12 years now of doing the podcast. So we really feel like we're making an impact one episode at a time and one listener at a time. So thanks for being on the show today.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. Nice to meet you, Tom. Or
Nice
see you
meeting
again.
you.
A Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to Michael Tracy, Tom Ziglar. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Don't underestimate the power of nice.